And I think that's one of the biggest things that these international candidates, especially people from Latin America, are facing when it comes to working for American clients. We're simply too different, and it's very complicated sometimes to fit with them.
Welcome to the Hired Hub podcast, your ultimate guide to mastering the complexities of remote work and pushing your career forward.
Whether you're tuning in from the busy streets of Latin America or any corner of the globe, we're here to give you tools and insights to succeed in today's dynamic job market. I'm your host, Gabby Morales.
And I am your co-host, Jess Torres. If you're a recent graduate eager to leave your mark or a seasoned pro looking to redirect your career, you can join us as we explore the endless possibilities of remote work and career growth.
Get ready to unlock your full potential with the Hired Hub podcast. Welcome back to the Hired Hub. Today's episode is all about diving deep into the world of recruitment, a topic that's critical for both job seekers and companies alike. Did you know that over 50% of job seekers never hear back after submitting a resume? And that it takes an average of 27 days to hire a candidate in the current market?
That's why we brought someone who's on the front line of the talent acquisition, Evelyn Oropeza. She's a talent acquisition specialist at Hire Remotely with a robust background in recruitment and experience working across multiple industries.
In this episode, we'll dive deep into the hiring process, uncover the biggest mistakes candidates make, and learn how you can tailor your resume and interview skills to really shine. With remote jobs in high demand, this conversation will give you the edge you need to secure that dream role. So let's jump right in. Hi, Evelyn. Welcome to the Hired Hub. How are you today?
Hello, girls. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here. I'm doing excellent. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Evelyn, thank you so much for coming and participating from this show. Okay, well, Evelyn, as someone who lives and breathes recruitment every single day, we wanted to ask you, what are some of the biggest mistakes that candidates make during this hiring process, and what can they do to stand out in today's competitive market?
I think two of the biggest mistakes that can come across when you're in a hiring or recruitment process are normally connected to the fact that it's very competitive right now. It's very hard to get into, interviews, speaking with companies and communicating with them. And I think two of the biggest mistakes are connected to this, and that will be overselling. And it will also be not being able to understand correctly the job descriptions. When it comes to overselling, a person can go ahead because of the desperation and, looking for something and job seeking something to be very overselling or say things about themselves that they are not going to be able to, overcome when they are already working into this company and situation. And that's probably sometimes very good in the beginning. You can oversell yourself. There are all the things that the recruiter wants to hear. But when you start doing the job, when you are starting in the position, it can be very hard to keep these very, very high qualifications and qualities that you cannot have. And also when it comes to the job descriptions, you can go ahead and think because of the desperation that you can, access to any kind of positions that you want and that you can fit into any kind of position. But that is not true. Job positions, and we need to start seeing it this way, are manuals, and they are very good ways to see if a candidate might fit. But if you don't fit into these job positions, that is not really something bad about you. That just doesn't mean the job position is right for you.
Yeah.
And people tend to overlook how they are able to fit into a job position because they think that if they are not able to fit, that's something that they need to fit. That's something that they need to overcome in order to fit into this position. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes because you are getting yourself into something that you are not really studying correctly, that you're not able to understand correctly. And in the long run, it's going to be an issue. And I think that's something that happens a lot. Sometimes I have conversations with people that really don't understand the job descriptions, really don't understand what is expected from them. And that is something that is going to give you issues, that is going to make you waste time, that you definitely shouldn't be wasting. And I think those are the biggest mistakes that are completely avoidable if we are able to look in the job seeking process in the most open way possible in order to get the best results.
Awesome. I have a question. Like, as a recruiter, how do you manage when you find a candidate like that, when you know that the candidate is not the best option from the get-go because maybe they're overselling themselves because they don't understand job qualifications? How do you manage that situation as a recruiter?
I try to be very honest and open with them. I think something that recruiters are very scared to do is being honest and open to the people. And actually, that's another human being you're talking to. And you should be able to communicate with them correctly. Hey, I don't think this job position might fit correctly with you, but I really like your profile. I just don't think this profile aligns correctly to what you're looking for right now. And obviously that is not something that the people looking for a job is going to understand, because you want a job, you want to find a job, you want to start working. But at the end of the day, you're going to end up in a situation that is much worse. Maybe you will be in a job position that is not going to satisfy you. Maybe you're going to be doing things that you don't want to be doing because you didn't take that into consideration. So I think it's very important, especially in the first interview, to be open with them. And not only when you have this type of candidate, but in general, be open with them and be honest to what you're expecting from them, so they are able to see the big picture and know how the process is going to go in a very open and natural way.
Right. And it's always better to get a response, even if it's not the answer that you want, which is moving forward in the process, than not getting anything at all. I think a lot of times it helps you finesse. It actually helps you polish and understand what you need to actually be fit for a job like that, for a role like that. But I do understand the part that you say where I understand the challenge. You know, I understand that sometimes you have to aim high. Sometimes you have to look at a job that maybe you are looking to learn how to carry it out more than know if you're fit right now at the moment to carry it out. And I think that recruiters and companies also understand that, especially when they're hiring entry level kind of positions where they know that people are very junior and unexperienced. Like, you have that risk, but you also need to know when you're biting more than you can chew. In that sense, like, if it's too much, I feel like it's better if the recruiter, and if they can see it right away, they can tell you, and they tell you point blank, and then you know what you need to improve in order to like be able to aim higher in future positions. But definitely you need to know like if you're qualified or not, because at the end it just makes the relationship unsustainable. Like you say, it just won't work out. Even if you oversell yourself and you do get the role, at the end it's not going to be sustainable. Either you're going to burn yourself, like you're gonna feel frustrated, you're not going to be able to do the work, or on the other hand, the hiring company will understand that you're not the right person, and they'll have to either, you know, correct it by training you, and that is the most positive outcome, like seeing if you have potential and you can do it, or on the other hand, you know, let you go. So it's definitely not a scenario that you want to end up with. So it's really hard. But thank you, Evelyn, for starting. I think it's a great way to start this conversation. And I also wanted to bring up something else. Like, did you know that over 50% of job seekers never hear back after applying, which is, you know, just what we're talking about. Like, think of the hiring process like a crowded city where job seekers and employers are trying to find each other through a maze of applications. In this topic, we'll look into many applications that get lost and give you straightforward tips to make sure yours gets noticed in the busy job market in that busy city. Evelyn, what do you think causes this disconnect between candidates and employers? Well, you know, considering that it's a sea of applications.
Absolutely. I actually brought to the study a study about this, you know, about different reasons why the conversation can be disconnected between both of them. Swati Hyrie speaks a little bit about 5 different situations where this disconnection can take place. The first, it will be the construct of expectations. That means, and I think this is something that happens a lot with recruiters, when you see a candidate that you think will contrast to the expectations you're looking for a position, you tend to ignore them in a way because you don't think they are going to be the right fit for this position. And the same thing can happen to the candidate. You don't think this is the right job for you, and you are not able to create that connection with the job position. And that is one of the biggest reasons why this disconnection takes place. Both persons that are involved in this process are looking for something very different. And it's very funny because this disconnection tends to happen because they don't communicate correctly. I think people tend to look to jobs as one life thing or something that needs to be like very special and very like a miracle or something good that has to happen to you. And it's not really, it's a negotiation most of the time. You have to negotiate with the person. You have to be able to speak with them. And this construct of expectations creates this barrier between the both of you because at the end, the recruiter wants to have you on the job and the candidate wants to have the job. And they both know they're going to have issues in their expectations, but none of them is able to communicate because they don't want to risk that job opportunity. They don't want to risk that job. So they're not able to communicate correctly these expectations that they have. So that's one of the biggest reasons why this connection takes place. At the same time, communication is a challenge. Communication is key in the recruitment process. And recruiters might not communicate the job requirements or expectation clearly. And to be honest, this can happen because, maybe the job description is not done correctly. There's information that changes during the time, depending on the client and depending on the person that needs the candidate. And sometimes we don't have enough information to provide the candidate. And it's very difficult to communicate, all this information about the job position correctly because we don't have it in our hands. And it's very funny because at the end of the day, this disconnection basically happens because nobody wants to give the candidate false information or information that maybe in the long run is not going to be the right one. So you retract yourself from giving it to them. The third one will be prejudice. That is something they were looking for to eradicate completely into the recruitment process. Recruiters might have unconscious biases that affect their decision-making the process. For example, they might have a preference for candidates from certain schools, industry, or backgrounds. And this tends to happen, especially in the past, a lot. And I think it's been eradicated right now, but there's a lot of people that view the recruitment process in a very old-fashioned way. That is certainly not something that should be doing right now. We shouldn't be able to disqualify candidates just because of their backgrounds from where they are, their skin colors, their sexuality. Those things shouldn't matter, but there's people that still consider they matter. And this is also that can create huge disconnection between the candidate and the recruiter when you're going into the process. The fourth one would be the talent constraint. Recruiters might have a limited pool of candidates to choose from. This is something that happens a lot specifically for very specific positions that are going to be for very specific industries, very specific clients.
They're very niche.
And they're very niche, and it's very complicated to find someone that might actually fit. So that communication is difficult to be created because in general, it's very difficult to navigate through these job positions that might be complicated or very, as you say, niche to create. And the competition. As you guys know, the market right now is actually insane, both on-site and remotely. It's very difficult to get a job. It's very difficult to get people. A lot of people are looking for jobs and a lot of recruiters are looking for people. And I think this competition and the fact that you're constantly running to get someone to find what you're looking for might have that disconnection in the conversation because you're looking for something, for a prize, for a medal. And you tend to overlook that you're dealing with people. And people need to communicate with you and people need to be able to open up with you in order to have this conversation done correctly. And I think this competition is, in the long run, has created a very big disconnection when it comes to recruiters and candidates. Because we tend to look to candidates sometimes of absolutely everything else but a person. And that is very bad. So I will say that the most important thing is to make sure in this process to make this disconnection not happen is to be open, be honest, and most importantly, remember that you are a human being and be human.
Yeah. And I think that there are some other two things to add. Thank you, Evelyn, because that's really important. Also, one thing, it's high volume of applications. Sometimes the recruiters receive a large number of applications, and this makes it difficult to respond to everyone. So I guess if you're still in the waiting process, you can probably send a cover letter, try to ask where is your application and status, because that's really important to know where your application or your resume is, in what status. Also, I think that sometimes internal candidates or referrals can be in the middle just because companies may prioritize internal candidates or referrals over an external application. So if you have a friend that it's working in a company that you really want to be in, you can probably talk with that person first, and that will make you probably be on the list, like know that that person might be there. Of course, they have to do the test, do all the process, but it's part of getting a little bit more noticed. And also, like, limited communication resources. Some companies have like lack of the capacity of notifying appliants, people that are applying to these jobs, and especially who don't meet the minimum qualifications. So, as probably you were saying, you're not qualified for the job, and you have to accept that, and you have to be enough mature to understand that it's not something that you're going to apply and then get the job, So I think to add that, it's really important. And thank you, Evelyn, because it's a really nice, how do you say, like, perspective of it. So I like that. And we also wanted to talk about another topic. With so many people applying for remote jobs, it can be really hard to stand out because, let's be honest, there's a lot of people that are qualified. But in a virtual world, there are smart ways to get noticed by recruiters. In this segment, we want to explore simple strategies to help you shine and land the perfect remote role. So in such a competitive job market, what are some top 3 things or a candidate can do to stand out during this hiring process, whether it's their resume, their cover letter, or their interview? And also, what do you think about customization of resumes for each application? Like, does it really matter, or is it worth it, the effort?
Well, when it comes to working remotely, I think that we tend to overlook a lot of people they were working with were never going to meet in person. The only person they were going to meet, the only things they were going to see is the person via a screen, via video calls, via phone calls. And it's important to demonstrate, especially in the first interview, that personality that might be very good. It's very funny because personality can be a double-edged sword. Wait, I need to say that again. Double-edged sword, because, it can be an issue when you're starting to work and you show too much personality, or maybe you get the worst out of your nerves when you're having this first interview. But I think personality is a big stand out because this is the first impression you're ever going to get. And that's not going to change. The first impression that the interviewer is going to have from you is probably going to stay during the whole process. It doesn't matter if you have the experience. It doesn't matter if you are good enough. That doesn't matter. The first impression is really going to hit. And I think this is one of the main things in general when working remotely, being able to communicate that personality. It doesn't matter if it's not right. At the end of the day, if a company doesn't like your personality and doesn't like the way you communicate, it's probably not the right kind of company for you. Something that I also consider that is very important is to be as clear as possible. I think because of how competitive the market is right now, people are very scared of saying no, of putting boundaries and showing what they really want and saying what they really want.
And waiting for the right offer.
That's correct. And it's like you need to be able to believe in yourself. If you're already in the first interview, that recruiter already knows that you had something that might work for this position. So be confident about it and be clear about it. I am expecting this. I want this. And I think this company might give it to me. Because it's a negotiation. You should be able to give all the information back. And this company should be able to listen to you. Because I think people tend to think that the company has the last word. But at the end of the day, if you don't really like it or something that they say you don't like, you are always able to walk out. And I think it's very important that we're clear with ourselves, thinking, this is really what I want. This is what I am expecting. This is something that I think might work for me in the long run. And these are very important questions that we need to ask ourselves and the recruiter. And in general, I think being very honest and being very open about new opportunities is something good. Something that we also do a lot, or that I do a lot in my process, is that sometimes a person cannot be a good fit for a specific position. But that doesn't mean he's not a good fit for any other. And I think it's very good to be open for new opportunities that might arise during the first interview, because maybe they might say, I don't think you're a very good profile for this specific position, but I have this and I think this might work. I think it's very important when you're looking for new jobs that new opportunities might arise and be able to understand them and to, make peace with the fact that maybe what you're looking for is not really what you need. And sometimes what you need can come from a very different shape of what you're expecting. And, it's speaking a little bit about the resumes and cover letters. I think sometimes the resumes, these one-time specific resumes that you can do for a specific position, they might work depending on the position. I think it's very different, the resume that recruiters look for a virtual assistant, for example, that the ones that they look for in a sales representative. When it comes to these very specific positions, when all this experience is needed and all this information is needed in order to build this kind of position or person that is going to be in this kind of position, you need to be specialized. You need to have years of experience. You need to understand the weight of this position on your shoulders. But when it comes to virtual assistants, assistant position, administrative position, normally they look for people that are very varied. They have a lot of different backgrounds. They have experience in a lot of different things, because that's something that is very important in a assistant. So this is actually very tricky. It will depend on what you think it can work. And it will depend in the recruiter as well. But I really value when people take the time to create very specific CVs. And I take that into consideration if that's worth something. I don't know if another recruiter can, take the value of this. But I think they can work and I think they can be good to be used. But it will definitely depend on the kind of position you're applying to.
Right. So, and just to recap, you're saying that to highlight, to stand out really in that selection process, first of all, you have to be honest. When it comes to your personality, be honest about your personality, be honest about your boundaries. And last of all, be resilient in case, the offer doesn't work out for you. You still have to show yourself valuable, because like you say, recruiters may see you and maybe it didn't work out with this position. It didn't work out with this company, but especially with companies, with recruitment agencies that have so many people and so many positions in mind for different clients, for different businesses, for different industries, you need to believe that you have value, and that you need to give yourself that respect and
Yes.
and present yourself with respect, so that people can actually see that from you and really take you into consideration for other positions. And then when it comes to the resume, I totally agree with you. It makes sense to personalize that experience, because again, it's really talking about keywords, especially and most now that sometimes you're doing so many different things. In my case, my scenario, I studied journalism. I studied mass communication, and I specialize in journalism. But then I have a subspecialty in marketing. So I've worked in both marketing and journalism. But then I see an offer related to press and to that kind of media, and I'm going to want to customize my resume and really detail my experience in those previous jobs that I've had, more related to press than to marketing. So it really makes sense for you to personalize that experience, so that, because like you mentioned, the first impression matters a lot. And I would say that the first impression is that resume and how good that resume is. So you really want to stand out in that perspective. You really want to give the impression that you are the perfect fit, at least in paper, for that position. And then when you get to the meeting, you can start really delving into the boundaries of it, the limitations, and to be honest with that, because being honest sometimes gives you more opportunities than limitations. If you're able to say, these are my flaws and these are things that I want to improve on, people will also see the honesty as a benefit and as a skill, and they will even look into investing in those flaws that that you're presenting yourself that you have. So it just makes sense to personalize that experience as much as possible for for the recruiter and for the hiring company. Like, you have to be that honest. And I know that it's hard because a lot of times, again, you only go through interviews when you need a job or when you want to find something different. So it's not something that you're doing on a regular basis. Every time that you have to go back into the job market, like regaining that confidence in yourself, it can be so hard. And it's so time consuming. Which I wanted to also ask you, like something that we've talked about previously on our podcast is about like using AI to really just streamline that process. Hiring and applying to jobs is really time consuming because again, you have to optimize the resume, you have to personalize the cover letter, you have to find the applications that you want and apply to those. So what do you think about using AI to customize your resume and to customize your cover letter? Have you seen that frequently, Evelyn? And does it show it? And is it a plus or even like a setback when you see that people are using AI to submit that kind of documentation?
Well, to be honest, I think something that I want to be very clear is that I totally agree. I think this is a very time-consuming process, and people tend to overlook how it can be very difficult on your mental health and how you're dealing with yourself and your expectations. And I think every kind of tool, every kind of software that can make the process lighter, faster, or easier is totally welcoming. I know a lot of recruiters don't agree with this. They are very against AI. And of course, AI has a lot of disadvantages, especially on, arts and things related to that, drawings. The artists are being very affected by AI. But in the good part, it's a very good tool in order to make the process as light as possible and as better as possible for you. And to be honest, I think the best way and the best thing to do is just to use it in a way that actually makes sense for what you're looking for and use it in a very smart way. Use it to give you ideas. Use it to help you motivate yourself in order to work with it. Use it in order to feel more comfortable in what kind of ideas do you want to express. I think this is an excellent tool. The thing is, it's very misused right now and people don't tend to use it correctly. And that is something that is going to affect your process if you're not using it correctly. But when used correctly, it's probably going to make you feel a lot better. It's going to motivate you and it's going to make the process very fast. But I think it will depend how you're able to welcome this tool into your life and make it part of your process. But to be honest, it's something that I agree on. Anything that makes this process better for the candidates is something that should be welcomed too.
Right. I like what you say, like use it for ideas. Like on a regular basis, I use AI for a lot of things.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
I use it more than Google actually nowadays.
Yeah, I agree.
I use it more than Google. Every time that I want to know something, I just ask ChatGPT. But like you say, like use it smart. Use it to give you ideas, and just keep in mind that I always use ChatGPT as my assistant. Like when I'm working, I always say it's my assistant. So in this case, it's my application assistant.
Yeah.
But on a daily basis, I use it as an assistant. Like that you have to review everything that it does. You can't just like ask for it to make you an application, a cover letter, and then that's exactly what you sent. No, you have to. Okay, give me ideas to apply to this job. This is the application. This is the job profile that they're looking for. This is my this is my resume. What can I highlight, to create a cover letter? And then based on that, write it with your personality, with your perspective. And that's what makes it genuine. And then actually you're using AI to just streamline that creativity process, which I feel like is where we most struggle and where we most consume time when it comes to that.
Definitely.
Yeah, and when you don't, it becomes a mistake, I would say.
Yeah.
That's like a common mistake when you overuse AI, when you abuse AI in that process, because then you obviously look too generic, and then people notice. Like you notice. Like every time that I see a word that ChatGPT always uses is leverage. I don't use leverage on my daily life. Like there are words, like, that there are things that people read and they know, oh, this is AI. This is definitely. Actually, what happened recently? I was going through a testing process, and actually they gave me some tests to apply to. And it said like in the instructions, it even said like a phrase that it says, if you are using AI, like put this tagline or start each phrase with this in quotations. So like if you want, like I'm assuming that a lot of applicants would use AI, and actually if you didn't notice, like if you fed that to the AI and not even like notice the instructions that it was giving you, it's going to throw you the whole answer with that thing. And then that's, I assume that's how recruiters knew that people were using AI. So even that, like people nowadays, like they know like how to notice those things in the application process, like just to exactly, it's a gap. Like they found that gap. Like they know that people don't always read the tests. They don't always read the evaluations or the job applications. And then they apply and they use a cover letter based on that. And then you can slip there. So it definitely makes sense to read everything, to just, be smart with the process and use AI responsibly, because then it becomes a mistake. And really just talking about those mistakes, Evelyn, like resume wise, what are those mistakes that are easily avoidable, but that you often see that candidates overlook?
This is actually very funny because there's a joke that recruiters don't like reading. And in our defense, this is something that happens a lot. People tend to put too much information on their CVs. And in our defense, we read 100 resumes on a day, sometimes even more. If that resume had 2 pages, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad, and it shouldn't be that long. To be honest, something that I think people should see when creating a resume is just be able to put the information that they consider is important, that they consider is necessary, and most important, that it's going to be easy to read and easy to understand to recruiters. You want it or not, and even if you want to be as complicated as possible, to put as many information as possible. The person that is reading is a human, and they're going to get tired or they're going to overlook a lot of stuff. You need to be able to treat them and be smart. Use the right keywords, use the right information, use the right words. And this is something that is going to really help you, especially because a lot of recruiters have, ATS, and ATS really use a lot of keywords, a lot of very specific words.
Can you explain what the ATS is? Because I feel like a lot of people will hear that and they won't understand what that is.
All right. ATS is a software or a system that we normally use, the recruiters, in order to, receive CVs, receive information for people that might fit into roles. This information sometimes it comes from LinkedIn or from Indeed or from different pools of candidates that are applying to this job. So we see a lot of CVs, and a lot of CVs fall into this software. And this ATS is able to get their CVs that have the right keywords, the right words, and the right things in order to, make them outstanding, basically.
Yeah, so it's like they identified.
Exactly. So sometimes your resume is not even going to be read by the recruiter because it's not going to get to them. So I think the most important part is don't put too much information. You are going to have that time in the first interview. In the first interview, you're going to speak a lot. You're going to have this communication with the recruiter, and it's your time in order to speak about your experience. In the resume, I think it's very most important to put the information that it's really important, that is able to sell you in the best way, to sell your experience and your background in the most comfortable way. And that is able just to create the right idea in order for a recruiter to have the first interview with you. This is like the first bite that the recruiter is going to have from you. So just don't overwork on it. I think that will be the word. People tend to really work in the resumes, to really put a lot of effort on that. And that is very appreciated. But if done correctly or overworking, it's probably just going to bring you more sorrow than happiness in the long run.
Definitely. I think just to highlight the most relevant skills and experience for that job, it's like, I know you might done a lot of different things during your whole life, but we need what we're looking for, and just show us what you have done related to what we're looking for. And recruiters are just looking for specific examples that showcase your skills and your achievements. I don't know, just investigate what's the company looking for and just apply to that and try to show the company that you've done that part that they're asking for. Now that we know this kind of interviews are for international kind of companies, what specific challenges do you see that are the candidates facing during this remote recruitment process, and how can they overcome these challenges?
Yes, I think something that it's very noticeable is that the process is simply different because it's being handled by people. They have a very different culture. Like, it's not the same thing. The American process is a lot faster. It's a lot more moving. It's a most step, more things to do, more things to say. And it tends to take time, but it also goes very fast. And it's very difficult for someone that has worked in Latin America for so many years. They has dealt with recruitment process with Latin American recruiters for so many years to be able to adapt in the first step. And that's something that a lot of people tend to have problems with, adapting to this kind of way that they tend to move. At the end of the day, it's not even the candidate's fault if something doesn't work out. It's because they are simply not able to keep up. And I think that's one of the biggest things that they are being, that these international candidates, especially people from Latin America, are facing when it comes to working for American clients. We're simply too different. And it's very complicated sometimes to fit with them. And also there's a lot of, prejudice and BA's idea about working with Latin American people. I think they tend to view us in a very different way because we are Latin Americans. And that's something that is like the bread of every day. This is, crazy xenophobia and racism that we cannot really run away from, but it's still there, especially for very specific kind of companies in the United States. And I think that's something a lot deeper that we're not going to talk about, but the recruitment process is just very complicated and they tend to go ahead in a very complicated way. For example, in Latin America, a recruitment process doesn't have that much steps, doesn't have that much interviews. It's a lot more natural, more honest, most open. While the American way is most like a negotiation. It's more speaking about what you're looking for, doing a match correctly into the candidate and the position. It's not looking at you like a human directly, but as something that might fit correctly into their puzzle. Exactly. So I don't know. I think that will be the biggest things. It's something that I definitely experienced, when I was looking for a job. And it's very difficult to adapt to this kind of way, especially after working in Venezuela for so many years. And, it's what it is. At the end of the day, you end up adapting to this and you end up understanding. But it's something that it can be very difficult in the beginning.
Yeah. So again, like those cultural differences, the different hiring practices, you say like it changes according to the culture. I would also add the language barriers.
Yes.
Like, sometimes you find a candidate that's so good on paper.
Yeah.
But then you speak and that the hiring company they won't accept it. And I don't accept it has like a negative, it's just like they require higher English management or, another language, because again, we're talking about international candidates. A lot of times they ask you to speak more than 2 languages.
Yeah,
so
it's even harder.
It's even harder. Like it's a new tier of complexity and really just abiding to that. And then I would also say the time zone differences. Like, again, a lot of people, and I assume that Exactly Hired Remotely works with a lot of American companies, but, they might be looking for candidates all over the world. And that's what Hired Remotely does. Like, you guys don't only focus on Latin American audiences, but you also look elsewhere. And you may have also clients elsewhere in other countries and in other time zones. So I feel like that can also be complicated when doing that search. Definitely. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have come to an end of another episode. Like we always want to extend these conversations more. We always want to continue them. And Evelyn, this has been an eye-opening conversation. For anyone looking to land a remote role, remember that it's all about standing out in a sea of applicants.
And also, did you know that 80% of job seekers are now looking for remote roles? But not only 20% of the jobs are currently remote. The competition is fierce, but with this tip that Evelyn has shared with us today, you will be one step ahead on securing that dream role.
Thank you again, Evelyn, for sharing your expertise with us today. We hope to have you back soon.
Thank you so much, girls. And I really hope that someone, can hear this and it can help them in a lot of different ways. And I think that's something that we're always looking for, being able to help candidates and people listening to us to make the process faster and more efficient for them, because that's all that really matters. So thank you so much for the invitation. I have a great time speaking with you guys, and I hope back soon.
Yes, we will love to have you back. And well, thank you all for tuning in today. If you found today's episode helpful, just don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. We'll be back soon with more conversations to help you thrive in this professional journey. Until then, I'm Jess.
And I'm Gabby. See you next time. That wraps another episode of the Hired Hub podcast. We hope you found today's discussion empowering and insightful. Remember, success in the world of remote work is within your reach, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more expert advice and engaging conversations. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to help us reach more people who can benefit from the Hired Hub podcast.